And now it's time for the Rugby Rant, folks. Yes, it's the Hammer, and I'm back for another Coach's Corner session. And I've got a very special guest once again to join me on the show. And I'm excited for this one because I think there's going to be a lot of interest, especially with so many wonderful Free Jacks fans up there in the Northeast. I have got none other than new head coach of the New England Freejacks, Ryan Martin. Ryan, how are you, mate?
I'm very good, thanks, Rob. It's great to be on the show, and looking forward to some of the tricky questions you got for me coming.
No tricky questions here. I might just ask you to just tell everybody publicly that this is the best podcast show, even beyond that of the Jacks Rangers, just so we get it on record.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be allowed to fly back into Boston if I say that.
You can't blame a guy for trying.
Yeah.
So, no, fans, like I said, we're coming back with another segment of the Coach's Corner. I absolutely love this because every coach that I have on just puts out a couple of nuggets that I think fans will really be able to enjoy and bite into. And I have no doubt that Coach Martin will be able to do the same. That being said, let's get a little bit of background for those that aren't familiar with Coach Ryan Martin. Coach Martin was actually the Free Jacks coach back in 2021. Then, if I'm not mistaken, you went back to New Zealand and then did a stint in Japan. So, give us the chronology there, because you've been with Otago as a part of the Mitre 10, won the Ranfurly Shield, a very prestigious competition for folks here in America that aren't familiar with New Zealand rugby competitions. That was in 2018. At a stint with the Asia Pacific Dragons and Toyota Verblitz. Where does that 2021 venture fit in, and what happened between 21 in your coaching stint and 2025 with the Free Jacks?
Yep. Well, I think if I go a little bit more back from that, I was actually a teacher for 17 years, 8 years as a primary school teacher, and then 9 years as a secondary school teacher. So that's kind of where I honed my craft. And then, had Otago from 2018 to 2020, and actually won the Ranfurly Shield twice in two different stints, at the end of 2018 and then also in 2020 against Jason Potros's Taranaki team. So,
there's an axe to grind with Potty.
There is. We'll have discussions about that, no doubt. And then, a little bit of an interesting journey, I suppose, because from Otago, I went to the Asia Pacific Dragons and set up a professional rugby entity in Singapore, which had never been done before. And we were based there for 7 months. The competition that we were meant to play in Global Rapid Rugby kind of folded underneath us. And then we took great responsibility and still preparing as though we had a tournament. We ended up playing quite a few exhibition games. So it actually worked out pretty well, and great experience setting up an entity in almost an unknown city for myself. And we created a fan base there. Then I went to the Free Jacks, as you mentioned, and really enjoyed that. And while I was with the Free Jacks, I actually got a phone call from the Melbourne Rebels. And I'd previously done a stint with the Rebels as kicking and skills coach in 2019 before COVID shut down Super Rugby. And they wanted me to come and do the attack. And it was kind of it was a tough decision at the time, but it was a no-brainer in terms of my own development as a coach. And for me, I'd always grown up loving Super Rugby, so it was like the pinnacle of coaching for me to be running an attack and Super Rugby, and I really enjoyed that. So I went back to Melbourne for that year and had a great time coaching the Rebels. One of the most notable wins was beating the Highlanders, the team that I live in Dunedin, so it was nice to beat my hometown team. And then
did they let you back into the city after that?
Well, it's a funny fact, actually. I've beaten them twice. We beat them at We played them at home here in Dunedin in 2019, and then away in 2020. So 2-0 on the board for me. And
maybe more importantly, did your wife let you back in the house?
well, yeah, it's always an interesting conversation, isn't it? But that's the life of a professional coach.
Yes,
And then, and then a really good friend of mine became head coach of Toyota Road Blitz, Ben Herring, who I coached with at Otago. And I owe a lot to Ben. He started my professional career as a coach and had a lot of faith in me. So he rang and asked to come and join him in Japan with the Toyota Road Blitz team. And Steve Hansen was our director of rugby. So it was, once again, in terms of my own development as a coach, it was a little bit of a no-brainer. So I spent 2 years in Japan under Steve and with Ben, and it was fantastic. Really enjoyed that. And then the opportunity came, obviously, to return back to the Freejacks. And I suppose I've had a little bit of FOMO. I've been away and watching it grow into this amazing beast. And it's from when we first started, it was pretty humble beginnings, and now it's a really, really awesome professional outfit. So I felt as I'm really well rounded as a coach now. Like if I was actually thinking the other day about the first fives I've worked with in my journey since the Freejacks. So I got to work with Matt Timor and Carter Gordon when I went to the Rebels. And then when I went to Toyota, the first year was with Billy LaRue, the famous South African, and then I had Bowden Barrett the next year. So building and relationships and working with that caliber of a player really keeps you sharp as a coach, and that's why I'm now really looking forward to coming back to the Freejacks and once again working with another class first five and Jason Otros. So I feel as I really developed, and it's been a cool worldwide journey, and yeah.
Well, there's kind of some interesting nuggets in there, folks, that you may or may not, realize is that when you have somebody like Ryan, who is a teacher at heart, you really get to see somebody who likes to develop players. And I think that's very true of your experiences throughout your coaching, CV.
Yeah, that's right. Like in New Zealand, professional coaching in rugby is highly, highly competitive. And especially if I wasn't a professional player myself. So the only way you can go up the pathway is two things. Obviously team success and the development of the players that you're working with. And one thing I always like to say is if people to ask about me, like my players that I work with are my cheerleaders, and I'd like to think that that's kind of my passion, is making people better. And if you're doing that, then success tends to come with it. So yeah, that's always been the way I roll.
Yeah, that's great to hear as a teacher myself. I think that's so important to develop not just athletes, but to develop people along the way. And what's interesting, folks, we were talking off camera before we got going, in that the really strong Otago connection throughout the league, of course. Corey Brown, last year's Nolan Go coach, came out of Otago. Danny Lee, Alama Aramia. As a matter of fact, Alama, when I was on he was on the show. He told us a really nice story about Bodie and just how humble of an individual Bowden Barrett really is. So it's really good to hear. And of course, Greg Cooper. So a lot of influence from Otago here in the MLR. But folks, we're going to talk about the Freejacks with head coach Ryan Martin in a lot more deeper detail in just one moment. So, Ryan, obviously, we want to talk about new year, new head coach for the Freejacks. You're one of 5 new head coaches in the league. I'm curious, I think fans are curious, what is one challenge you expect to face as you head into 2025, the newly appointed head coach of New England?
Well, I think there's no hiding from the fact that they're back-to-back title winners. So the first thing that means is we've got a target on our backs. We're going to be the hunted team. Everyone wants to knock over, the champions. So that has a twofold thing for me. It means there's a real responsibility about carrying on some of the great stuff that's gone on before myself with Scott and his coaching crews. and massive respect to what they've been able to do. But I think also adding value and bringing my personality to what we'll be doing, which is chasing a three-peat. And I think if you're not excited by that, then you wouldn't probably take this role. So yeah, I think the biggest challenge, knowing everyone's going to bring their best game, but the effect of that is mean we have to front every week. There's going to be no excuses, and it will actually sharpen us. So essentially, we're playing really high level test match footy week in, week out, which will be the best thing you can do for the playing group.
Yeah, well, I want to ask about that because my next question, I don't think it was anybody was should be surprised by this, but obviously, you spoke of it. Two back-to-back MLR Shield championships. So first, do you feel any pressure? Added pressure in that regard. And second, will Free Jacks fans and fans around the league see a different style of play given the fact that, Scott, comes from South Africa, a little bit style there, different influences. You're from New Zealand, again, different style, different influences. So kind of a two-part question there. One about pressure or added pressure. The other one about, a change of style for the Free Jacks.
Yeah. So to answer the first question, I don't see it as pressure. I see it as responsibility. And one thing I learned from Ben Herring, who is a fantastic head coach, is he talks about the two realms that a rugby environment sits under, and one is the public success and then the private success. So the public success is what you see on a Saturday or a Sunday. That's the result of the game. That's just the tip of the iceberg. But the private success is what we'd mentioned before around the development of the players and the environment as people, and having a really fun, enjoyable, like high learning environment. That's what I'm really passionate about. And that's what's happened previously with the Free Jacks. So I feel a lot of responsibility around making sure our off field is the best in the league, and players can come in and feel really comfortable early on, and they can be the best versions of themselves on and off the field. So that's the way I'm looking at it. It's been really responsible for around what's happened before and adding value into that space, especially the private success of what's been going well for the Free Jacks. And then to answer your second question, I think I'm definitely coming in and respecting what's happened before and the great stuff that Scott's put in the program. But it would be silly to continue doing what we're doing, because we're going to have to do things that haven't been done before if we want to do a three-peat, which has never actually been done before. So I'm pretty passionate around where I can add value. I work really hard with our analyst, Colton Bennett, and we've kind of unpicked what we'd call the winningest behaviours in the league at the moment. So we feel as though we're onto something pretty special around where do you get bang for your buck. And so we're gonna play quite an aggressive style. I picked up heaps of tips over traveling around the last 5 years, working with some world class players. Peter Steph-Toits, as I mentioned before, Matt Tamors, Billy LaRue, Bowden Barrett, Aaron Smith. And I feel as though I'm on the precipice of a really cool style of game that, not only that the players enjoy, but spectators can watch and kind of be quite proud of it. And I think opposition always know you've had a real game on your hands once you've played the Free Jacks. So that's where we're going. I think your mute's on, Rob.
I'll have to do some editing there. Sorry, my dog was barking upstairs, and I didn't want that to interrupt your flow. But you spoke of public success, and as I listen to you talk about being on the precipice of this kind of new style, I have no doubt that regardless of outcome, I mean, whether you get to the final and even win it or not, that entertaining style will certainly provide the Free Jacks fans with a lot to watch and a lot to enjoy over the course of the 2025 season. And as long as you're developing players will appreciate playing for you. So I think you have two really nice objectives there in terms of, overcoming those hurdles. And it's awesome to hear.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's important.
So along with that, I guess, and I'm going to jump ahead in some of my questions. And maybe you already answered these, so this is why I'm going to it. Um, in rugby, there's a lot of talk about KPIs. For fans that don't know, those are key performance indicators. It's a demonstration of success, essentially. And so I guess it's rather poignant or important right now to ask you, are those your two KPIs for the season, or are there some KPIs that we can kind of drill into a little bit more so and provide some Free Jacks fans with some insight on?
Yeah, I think what I've learnt playing in a variety of competitions throughout the world is there's two really defining factors in the game at the moment, and obviously the defenses have come to the fore, and it's put a lot of pressure on the attack. But where I believe um, you can make a difference in an area that we'll be kind of really honing in on is around the attack breakdown and being a lot more efficient in that area, and doing a couple of tricks so that we're committing more players, more defensive players to our attack breakdown. And then the second one big KPI for us is going to be around our kicking game and just getting a little bit more aggressive, and understanding how we can always manipulate that kind of vertical and horizontal space through a really accurate and aggressive kicking game. And what that means is that that style means everyone in the backline needs to have an aggressive style of kick. So it's something we've kind of started to touch on already, and they're probably the two areas that, in terms of KPIs, we're going to be really, really ruthless around it, that attack breakdown and an aggressive front foot kicking game. So we're kind of triple threats across our backline.
What's interesting is anybody that's watched the Free Jacks play know that last year, well, over the last several seasons, the Free Jacks are very good at the breakdown. Fastball, quick lightning ball out of the rucks, on their offensive attack. And I really have seen the Free Jacks do a very good job at attacking the breakdown in the defensive structure. So I'm absolutely positive that KPI is most definitely attainable very quickly. But you talk about this new attacking style, and of course, it doesn't hurt to have Jason Patros, who, in my opinion, he may not be the fastest 10 in the league, may not be the quickest, may not be, that guy that just has, Bowden breakaway speed, but what a very astute rugby mind, incredible vision, has all the tools in his tool belt. And one of those, in my mind, is his ability in tactical kicking. Does this, are you just salivating at getting the opportunity to put him to work on the field?
Yeah, totally. And it's interesting having worked with really good first fives. The power of a great first five. It's like having a mini coach on the field, and it's important that you have a really good marriage with that player as a player coach, and essentially they're just your eyes. So you should always be able to watch a game back and both be looking for the same things and saying the same language around what you're seeing and where the space is. So I think he's a very underrated player in the New Zealand system, and obviously he really enjoys and expresses himself in the MLR, and really looks after his body. He's got a few more years in the old bones yet. It was interesting actually coaching Bowden Barrett. Bowden rates Potty very highly, and he said it was, they went through the Taranaki system together, and it was just a couple of lucky breaks that Bowden got that kind of, his ascension to the higher ranks went that way, whereas he reckons and firmly believes Potros is as good as what he was doing. So he's got some big cheerleaders back here in New Zealand.
Well, that's certainly high praise, because we know what kind of player Bodie is, World Rugby Player of the Year several years ago, and just I don't know, he's got to have amassed well over 100 caps at this point. So World Cup winner. So that again, high praise, and I think the world of Potty himself. I think was he the Player of the Year in 2023, if I'm not mistaken. So one heck of a player, as you said, in his own right. I want to talk a little bit about, as a teacher, because you mentioned that's your background. That's where you came from, of course. For those that haven't spent a lot of time around the sheds with Ryan Martin, watched him coach, watched him help develop players, watched him instruct and be a teacher, how would you describe your coaching style for those who are uninitiated in the Free Jack sheds and in and around the Free Jacks camp?
Yeah, I was a really passionate teacher, and I loved designing sessions and weekly structures within the classroom that would bring kind of the best out of all the students, no matter what their background was or where their strengths lay. And that's what I'm highly passionate about in rugby environments. I'm a big follower of Doug Lamov, famous educator, an American. He's actually done a lot of work with the Celtics, with Joe Mazzulla, and he's a big fan of his as well. And it's just around everything you do. So from your meetings and your training structure and your training plan, I'm passionate about chasing the perfect training week. Like, that's what really gets me excited, is designing a week where every meeting, like, people want to get to a meeting because they just don't know what's going to happen. It's the highlight of their day. I always think back to, like, your best classroom teachers. You remember when, like, the science teacher blew up the classroom by accident, but it was like a cool experiment. Like, you remember that day. So I'm about, like, trying to create an environment where people, like, want to be there and it's exciting. You kind of don't know what's going to happen. And then when you're training, like, the ability to quickly flick a switch, I call it joyful seriousness. So just the ability to go in and out of modalities. And yeah, I'm highly detailed, and I think it can be sometimes coaching high detail can come across quite boring, I suppose. But the secret I try and do is bring, like, heaps of passion to it, heaps of energy, and make little things really important, and get the players passionate about getting better in little parts of their game that collectively mean the team can play a style that, as we talked about before, is entertaining and people are proud to watch. So I think if someone walked in the Free Jacks environment, they'd see an environment with people smiling, they're wanting to be there. The thing I'm really focusing on this year is attention, and, like, being attentive to everything in the environment, attentive in meetings, short, sharp, and getting heaps out of it. That's probably what they'd see if they can.
Again, a lot of great nuggets in there. One of the things that interests me is the fact that you spoke of just being a teacher, that there's an inherent love and joy that you get when a lesson comes off just the right way,
Yeah.
right? When the kids, your students love it, enjoy it, they want more, they want to come back again. And there's nothing, I mean, that's about as big a thrill as it is, being a player and winning a game, right?
Yeah, that's right. Like, I just love the training week, like, putting together an awesome week, because the game will take care of itself if you've
Yeah.
put the right things in place. And sometimes you can't control what it could be a bad reffing decision, or you lose a player through injury, or things that you can't control. But if you have an awesome week, then you put your best foot forward.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. And as you talk about, your style and being highly detailed and things like that, it's funny because I'm looking at the cap on your head and I'm thinking about your the importance that being highly detailed has to you. Reminds me of another coach that recently coached in New England, just in a different sort of sport, uh, related to rugby, of course, and that's none other than Bill Belichick. I mean, that's what
Mm.
they'd say about him is, he would drill down into the history of a team and to where it came from and get all the little bits and details. And players like that about his coaching and his style and the way he went about his business.
Yeah.
So it's exciting to hear that. Maybe I'll have to fly out and be a fly on the wall.
Yes, yes.
So, I want to turn our attention a little bit more to your roster.
Mhm.
Seems like all the teams have been extremely busy over the offseason. And I've heard it from a number of coaches. You said it yourself, where the league, the MLR, the Free Jacks were in 2021 is heaps different than it is in 2025. And one of the biggest reasons is because the amount of talent that's coming here. Not only coaching talent, somebody like yourselves or Self, Alama, Danny, Greg, Corey, et cetera, go down the list, but also players. And the Free Jacks have had some really interesting roster announcements in the off season, been extremely busy. Um, so my question is for Free Jacks fans, or maybe even those fans that are old Dallas fans that are looking for a place to hang their hat or a hat to put on their head. Um, you know, who should those people be looking at and be exciting about coming into the Free Jacks camp this year?
Yeah, it's we've been pretty strategic. Like Tom Kindly does a fantastic job around the recruiting. You got to take your hat off to him. He's been there since day dot, and taken the organisation through to a championship winning organisation now, and a lot of it's around the recruitment. And we always look for character first, so we do a lot of homework. There's no stone left unturned when we're doing our recruitment. So I think one of the most exciting ones for me is Sam Keard. He's coming from Northland, who I coached in the NPC this year. But Sam's actually had a lot of Super Rugby experience. He's been with the Highlanders. He's been with New South Wales Waratahs. He was actually on the brink of playing Super Rugby again this year, but he really wants to experience the New England Freejacks and the culture of American rugby. So he's made a big call to do that. And he is high quality lock. Really, really awesome line ability, super cerebral, a big destructive ball carry, really physical, really good body shape. So he's going to be, I believe he's like almost world class. He could be whatever he wants to be, and bringing someone like that into the environment who's had that experience, and he's a really humble, just goes about his work. He's going to be awesome around our domestic players, a professional at his best. That's part of it as well. Like the guys that you bring in, you want them to add to the environment through their professionalism and rubbing shoulders with young up and coming players, domestic players. So he's going to be huge for us. I think up front, John A. Kurikuriduadua, the Fijian drill and flying Fijians prop. He is an absolute weapon in open field rugby, prop with the skills of a centre. He's going to be, a real linchpin for us. Aggressive scrummager, loves scrumming, which is, an art in itself, isn't it? So he's going to be really shore up our scrum and make us really aggressive around that game line with his carries. And then out in the backs, someone that I'm quite excited by is Simon Toliafoa from Counties Manukau. He had a breakout season in the National Provincial Championship this year for Counties, and if you watch some of his footage, he is amazing footwork with the ball, really talented player, and has taken all his chances, kind of worked his way out of club rugby into the Counties environment, and then become a regular starting player for Counties. Loves having the ball, loves beating defenders, does it with a smile on his face. So I think he's going to be really electric for us. And add a dimension of excitement out wide, keeping the ball alive, a lot of offloads. So yeah, they're probably the three guys I'm super excited about.
And we talked about Potty being player of the year 2 years ago. You guys were lucky. I mean, I don't want to say lucky, but fortunate is perhaps a better word to pick up a guy like Geronimo Gomez Vara
Yeah.
into the season with the supplemental or supplemental draft from Dallas.
Mm.
I mean, he was amazing. I forgot which game it was last season, but about mid-season, he might have played, and having played seven, obviously not to that caliber, but having played seven, I appreciate good back row play. And he probably had one of the best matches I'd ever seen a seven play in the league in the 7 years that I've been watching. It was really amazing. What an amazing player he is.
Yeah. Well, I was just over doing a December training camp, and he came for our last week, Geronimo, and the first thing I said to him as a coach, I said, I'm going to make you the best version of yourself. And he goes, I want to play for Argentina. And I said, we shook hands on it. I said, that's it. That's where we're going. So he's highly aspirational. As you said, beast mode flanker. And, you put him alongside Vian Conradi, who's had a fantastic rehab. He's going to be, he's like a dog in a cage. He's been poked with a stick for 6 months, and we're going to open the cage at round one, and you're going to, So that's having those types of players complementing each other means we can play a different style. What I was mentioning before. So yeah, pretty exciting.
So some really, really quality players added to what was already a quality roster. And of course, you know what I love about somebody you mentioned, Sam, the fact that I think he's going to be able to take some pressure off of Larry a little bit, right? Because I mean, of course, just such a quality player, a quality individual. But then you bring in somebody that's going to be able to shoulder that load a bit. It takes the pressure off, and you can really see players shine at that point because they don't feel as much pressure to not just, to always lead and not necessarily lead into their play a bit.
Yeah, well, what's also funny about with Larson is they know each other. They're both from Northland, so they're the Northland brothers. The Taniwha brothers will be in the locking department together.
Okay, so it sounds like the transition is going to be seamless for you. And as we talk about transitions, of course, you have whole new staff. DeWald, Senecal, Palm Simonoa. How do you pronounce it?
Simona, yeah.
Simona. And then Director of Rugby, Director of Physical Performance, Nick Marquette.
Yep, Marquette.
So, talk about this staff that you've assembled. Are these individuals that you've worked with in prior experiences? What makes them, important to moving forward to 2025?
Yeah, well, if I start with DeWald, he actually helped the Freejacks last year. He came on as a spot coach, online coach to help with the set piece. Obviously, they're having some issues earlier in the season with it. So, and he's coaching at Benetton at the moment. He's amazing forwards coach, super innovative. He's been coaching for 8 to 10 years now in the professional league, and he's got high aspirations. I see him coaching South Africa one day. That's my goal for him. And he is an absolute set piece specialist. He's really got the forwards are all excited about some of his ideas, and he'll bring a real grip to our forward pack. And he enjoys the breakdown as well, so that'll add really nicely. And then Palm Simona I actually know from Melbourne Rebels. So my first stint there, he was the director of the academy. And then my second stint, he was assistant defense coach. So I've worked with Pommy before and get on really well with him. And he brings an awesome kind of calm demeanor. He's a very passionate coach, and he's really good around the combat areas of the game. He's got into mixed martial arts over the last 10 years, I think it is. And he's got some awesome kind of movements and understanding your body and that kind of close quarter combat stuff that he'll be able to add to our game. And then Nick comes in from North Harbour and also the Moana Pacifica program from Super Rugby. And he's just a really shrewd operator, been obviously working at the high level around the strength and conditioning and athletic performance areas in New Zealand. And I think he sees this as an awesome opportunity to lead a program and put some of his good skills to practice with this new group. And I haven't worked with any of the new ones except for Pom, as I mentioned. So there will be a little bit of gelling, and we've been having a lot of Zooms over the last 4 months and getting aligned on everything. And I think we're in a really good space. When you put a coaching group together, you kind of want to make sure the personalities will complement each other. So I think that's what we've done really well is we'll have our strengths and maybe the areas that we aren't so strong in another person is good at. So I think it's a nice, really nice feel to the group.
And not to mention, I suppose I didn't want to forget your U23 coaches, your U23 coach, Nate Brakely, which is a great find, recently retired Rugby New York, of course, USA Rugby. So, you can't find a better person that's more invested in USA Rugby than somebody like Nate.
Yeah, I actually met Nate when I was over for the December camp, and I was really impressed with how diligent, and he's very cerebral. He's going to be an amazing coach, and I think that's what USA Rugby needs is really good coaches like him coming through, really aspirational, knows the game, been in that scene for a long time. knows where the challenges are for USA Rugby, which are unique to it itself. So I think what a fantastic how lucky we are to have him with the U23s. And I said to him, we want you coming in whenever you can to our program and just assimilating with us, and he'll grow very fast. You'll see him go up the ranks pretty quickly.
And the other thing I love about this is, I continuously see you talk about your coaches in the same sense that you talked about Geronimo, right? Is that, this isn't a stopping point for them, that there would be no better honor for you than to see one of your coaches go to the next level, go to a new place and thrive. Whether it's Duvall or whether it's Nate, that's a sign of a true teacher, that they want something better for those around them, which is awesome to see. I also find it interesting that as we watch rugby become more professional, and where we watch rugby become to be broken down into its granular detail, more and more combat, MMA, wrestling elements and movements, as you say, coming into the fray. As a wrestling coach myself, I can really appreciate how much influence it had on my game, having come from that background myself.
Yeah, I'm really passionate around that area of the game. Like the breakdown is 80% of the game now, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the thing that happens the most. And I was actually quite inspired when I was in Japan watching the sumo wrestlers, just how they generate a lot of force. And I actually showed a clip in our December camp to our New England Freejacks players around. It's actually a very violent sport. A lot of the media that comes out to the international audience is pretty controlled. But if you actually go to a live sumo wrestling tournament, it is very violent, and those guys know how to use every part of their body to its fullest extent. And I was surprised at the amount of knockouts just there are using the underside of their palms and their elbows and generating a lot of force in 2 by 2 meter square. And that got me really intrigued around how they're using their legs and their hand that touches the ground first. And we've actually been starting to put a little bit of that stuff into our training already. So you're right, that's a big part of where the game's going, I reckon.
Well, certainly one word has come out of this that I describe you and your style: innovative. Sounds like there's a lot of innovation, which is great to see. I can't wait to see how that plays out in MLR 2025. But before we get to 2025, let's take a moment to talk about 2024 draft. And we were talking about personnel earlier, and I want to speak to some of those individuals, 3 individuals, as a matter of fact, that were selected as a part of the 2024 draft. Number 4, Kaipono Kayoshi. Number 14, Matt Carrion. And at number 36, Emmanuel Lai, all drafted in 2024. 2 questions here. What do you like about this group of draftees? But maybe more importantly to fans, can they contribute in year one?
Yeah, great question. And as I mentioned, it was awesome to have the December camp and actually get in front of these guys. And this will give you a little bit of an indication of how small the rugby world is. But Kaipono went to school at St. Mary's with my translator in Japan at Toyota Blitz. So when you are coaching in Japan, you have your own translator to get message across quickly. And his name was Yoshi, and he was a rugby player at St. Mary's with Kaipono. So that was hilarious. But the first thing I noticed about Kaipono is he actually has a Māori tattoo on his hand. So he has a very interesting lineage. He has a bit of Māori in him, some Japanese. So, and he is an absolute workhorse, fantastic shape, got a bit between the teeth, what you want from all your flankers. And I was highly impressed. He picked up things really quickly, has a really awesome learning ability. And I think he could be a really important part of our program. Just looking at the little parts of his game already, and just how quickly he adapted to what was happening, and he definitely put his best foot forward in our camp. So I think he could be someone to definitely have a close look at. He's got a big future ahead of him. And then Matt Carrion, he was once again a little bit of an unknown for me, but once he was in front of me in the drills and our skill. And our mini games, really has actually really awesome game sense. And I think coming out of that Life University, you would expect that that program down there. And he's actually a really solid figure as well. Carries his body weight really well. Super fit, super keen. Nothing's a problem, which is what you want from those new guys coming into the program. And we're really excited around what we can do with him. And I reckon he'll be a year or two project for us, but who knows how quickly things can happen in the rugby world. And then E-Man, I was really impressed with him. Heaps of energy. Once again, high detailed player, picks things up quickly. And I think having worked with Aaron Smith at Toyota Blitz, I've got some awesome things around halfbacks and how they can kind of get their pass going really good quickly. So looking forward to working with him. And yeah, I think we've done really well around what we got out of the draft. And no doubt those three will be adding value at some stage.
Well, that's certainly good news again, because we want to see the American rugby tree grow bigger as we move forward. Especially as we have a distant eye on 2031, or maybe not so distant eye. It's going to be right around the corner before we know it. So, stacking up your roster, and I'm not asking you to give away the house or the horse in the sheds or whatever, but I am curious to get your perspective of what positions are the Free Jacks the deepest, and where will we have to see some individuals kind of put their hand up and say, yeah, I'm going to have a crack, coach. I'm going to make that position, or I'm going to make it mine.
Yeah, I think we're really strong in and around the back row. So locks through to 6, 7, and 8. We've got guys that can kind of bounce between those positions. Obviously, it's Joe Johnson returning. Is a huge. He's playing some of his best football at the moment, and for the NPC, Bay of Plenty, he's probably the best player in the NPC, to be honest. So we're going to be super strong in and around the back row, and it means we can play a really gritty, aggressive style of rugby, as you mentioned, on both sides of the breakdown, being aggressive. So I think that's a real position of strength, the back row. Looking out in the back line, maybe having a really good understudy for Potty could be, that's kind of up for grabs, like that kind of 10-15 swing position. Obviously, Reece McDonald's out with injury, so that's 15, and kind of that 10 underneath Potty is where some people can put their hands up. But once again, we kind of selected players that are specialists in their positions, and then maybe 2 or 3 swing players in the back line. So that's an area of excitement, because definitely someone can put their hand up for that 15 jersey, especially.
Well, I'm particularly interested in what you said there about having somebody step in and be willing to put their hand up for that 10 position, when Potty needs a rest, or we're going to talk about the schedule here in a moment, because I do recall last year, Potty got knocked out of the Hounds match.
Yeah.
And Reece came in and is dynamic, and I love watching Reece McDonald play, and he's so dynamic, and he's so got such great feet. He can catch people off guard, but he's not really a 10 per se. It's not where he strikes best. I kind of said that's where when New England started to struggle here in Chicago in that particular game. So I'm really interested to see where that development of that next number 10, or that understudy for Potty comes from. So I'll have my eye on that, and it's interesting that you said it. I love your honesty there. So I mentioned schedule. Obviously, the Players Association put out their post regarding the schedule. Some fans had some concerns. I don't want to talk about whether it's wrong or right. If you listen to players last year, they tell you almost to a man that they've got to do away with that 2-week break in the international window, and then coming into the playoffs, and of course the championship. And the only way to do that was to bring the schedule up a little earlier in the year, and then you had to compress some games. So we're not going to debate that issue. What we're going to talk about is how do you manage it. And I got to be fair, as a Chicago fan and a NOLA fan, I have my heart. It's like my children. Yeah, I love them both for different reasons. I kind of wish that the champs would add a little tougher schedule in that regard. Like, San Diego and Utah, and I think Seattle really had some, some tough draws, and I think the anthem does too. You guys were kind of fortunate. And just so folks know, on the 12th of April, home against San Diego, on the 18th, so 6 days after, which isn't unusual because you might play on a Sunday and go to a Saturday.
Yeah.
You're playing at the anthem, and then you come back, on the 22nd, 4 days later, and you're playing at home against LA. So 3 games in 10 days, but the reality is it's not as a murderous schedule as some of the other teams have. Nevertheless, um, how do you deal with this as a coach? Have you already started as a staff to look at this
Yeah.
stretch here and
Yeah.
figure out how you're going to attack it with personnel?
Yeah, totally. So we have a big team Zoom call tomorrow, and the thing that we're going to start with is we're going to break down the season and where our two buys sit, the importance of them, the importance of the players knowing that, so they can spend some awesome time with their families, and then where we train around that, and then we looked at obviously the 3 games. So in New Zealand and the NPC, they call it a Storm Week. They've been using it for maybe since 2018 they've been. And the funniest thing is with the Storm Week in New Zealand and the EPC is the players love it because you train less and you play more. And then what it also means is this year with Northland, the team I was assistant coach with, head coach Dale McLeod, we in our Storm Week in the middle game when we played Waikato on a Wednesday after a Saturday game, we just used our whole squad. So it was a really nice feel that everyone knew at some stage they were going to get some game time. And obviously as a coach, it means you have to be, coaching really well and make sure that the depth of your squad from player number 1 to player number 40 is getting lots of love in the training sessions. So at any time they get called upon, they can front. And I think it forces your hand as a coach to, rather than talk about the depth of your squad or backing your young fellas, you truly have to. And I probably look at it more that way. I would probably call it a tranquility week because it's almost perfect for the players. Hardly any training, play more games, and back the depth of your squad.
Well, again, some great stuff to unpack there, folks. And I think one of the most significant is, first of all, Alama Aramir, when I talked to him last week, spoke of Storm Week, and he approached it from the same mentality, like, well, this is what we do.
Mm.
This is not unusual for us. And oh yeah, we're gonna, it's not a problem. We're gonna head right into this, on the front foot and take it on, and not look at it as a detriment, but look at it as an opportunity. And I really like the fact that you approach it as an upfront opportunity for players who are perhaps in the back end of the roster. They know they're going to get a chance, right? And so it keeps them engaged. I think that's the difficult thing sometimes when you're trying to develop players, right? Is if they don't get enough opportunities to play, it's difficult to keep them engaged in the lesson, right?
Yeah.
So you got to keep them engaged, and what a great opportunity if they know that chance is going to come at particular parts of the season.
Yeah, I think it's the importance of it, like getting it out there early. We're going to do it tomorrow on our big Zoom call and say, rightio, this is what it looks like, and this is where we're going to really back the strength of our squad.
Well, that's awesome to hear. I tell you, Ryan, this has been such a joy to catch up with you. It's so refreshing to hear your take and your perspective, and perhaps some new elements that you hope to bring into the MLR and the Freejacks in particular. It's been a lot of fun spending almost an hour with you talking about rugby, and I can't wait to catch up sometime when you guys come visit Chicago. We'll treat you better than the South Africans treated New Zealand in '95. I will tell you that. I'll try to, well, we might have a few dogs outside the hotel barking in the middle of the night, but we'll try to keep it to a minimum. Nevertheless, thank you so much for your willingness to join. It's an absolute pleasure.
No, thank you very much for having me on. It's been great.
Yeah. And so, folks, this is going to wrap up another edition of the Coach's Corner here from the Rugby Rant. And I want to extend my greatest thanks to the Freejacks organization, to head coach Ryan Martin, to Wheels, Thomas Grant, and TK. All of them had a hand in helping me get in touch with Coach Martin all the way across the world, shall we say. But we can't wait for him to come back to the United States, bring his wife with him, and enjoy the exciting rugby culture here in the United States, and in particular Fort Quincy. So, Coach Ryan, thank you once again from the bottom of my heart for joining the show. And fans, there is no doubt that we seek to grow rugby one at a time, one fan at a time, and hopefully a little insight with Coach Martin helped do that. But nevertheless, catch us at the next Coach's Corner, because you know what? We're going to see you at the next.